Super Lucky Disaster Man. Chapter 46, Answering the phone for a friend is normal. Dazai Osamu looked sharply at Komaeda Nagito. Do you know him? No, Komaeda Nagito said without a change in expression. This ability user with the Kyogoku surname did make him think first of Kyogoku Natsuhiko. But not all ability users in different worlds are literary figures. Maybe they have relatives, after all. At the very least, he wanted to know what the opponent's ability was called before proceeding to the next step, right? Just a Kyogoku surname. That karate genius boy in the news, Kyogoku, was also named Kyogoku, after all. In short, this kind of straightforward and rough conclusion didn't need to be shared with Dazai-kun. In case Dazai-kun got influenced by his inferior deduction skill, he couldn't forgive himself. Dazai Osamu slightly narrowed his eyes but soon revealed a bright smile. Anyway, it's none of our business, so not knowing is just fine. He just didn't believe he had misjudged someone, so he came to confirm it. Now that he knew it wasn't his own problem, but rather that the other person was affected by an ability, his purpose was fulfilled. As for what Komaeda-kun is hiding. Komaeda-kun hides many things, and this one is just one more. Kyogoku, the ability user, probably has more ways to utilize his skill, which could be quite threatening if used properly. We'll need to pay closer attention later. Hagiwara Kenji came over and also noticed that the culprit's mental state seemed to change a bit, but he thought that was Inspector Megu Rei's matter to keep an eye on. He wasn't here to investigate a whole crowd, his main purpose was Komaeda Nagito. Komaeda-kun, you were just caught up in this. He wasn't targeting you, so there's no need to pay too much attention to him, Hagiwara Kenji said. Come along with your friend to make the police report. As he spoke, Hagiwara Kenji couldn't help but glance at Dazai Osamu. He had always thought that if he ever had a child in the future, he would definitely be an exceptionally open-minded parent, but now he knew that, as a police officer, he naturally had conflicting feelings toward those in the mafia. It wasn't really that he didn't believe there could be good people in the mafia, just that this Dazai Osamu really isn't within the range of good people. He had just asked some familiar colleagues, and it turned out that the port mafia had really been thriving in recent years, with Dazai Osamu also being on the priority watch list. Although he doesn't look very old, being the youngest executive in port mafia's history, his hands are certainly not clean. In fact, just thinking about the kind of feats required to become an executive makes Hagiwara Kenji think that if someone caught hold of this guy's weakness, though Japan generally doesn't enforce the death penalty, he'd likely spend the rest of his life in prison. He's always been really mindful of children, so getting mixed up with a person like this makes it impossible not to worry. He could only hope that Dazai Osamu himself understands this and won't bring Yokohama's messy affairs here. The real assassination target has already made the report, and now it's the turn of the remaining two. Komaeda Nagito made reports so proficiently it made people feel heartache, while Dazai Osamu actually used the excuse of, anyway, we're always together, experiencing the same events, and besides, the statement each of us gives is sufficient verification for the other, to reluctantly escape from making reports. What a joke. Coming all the way to Tokyo, doing nothing, but instead leaving behind a record in Tokyo, Mori-san would surely die laughing. Speaking of which, it was the same on the bus last time. Being with Komaeda-kun, he ended up needing to make police reports. Dazai Osamu, venting inwardly, leaned against the wall, waiting for Komaeda Nagito to finish the reports. Although Dazai Osamu's identity is relatively sensitive, after all, Japan is a lawful and law-abiding country, so they couldn't just say, you're a port mafia member, and forcibly detain him. If the port mafia were to sue them in court, it would become a big problem. Knowing that they couldn't get anything out of Dazai Osamu, and since the main conflict wasn't really between them, Komaeda Nagito and Dazai Osamu were soon let go. As the employer of the janitor culprit, the hotel naturally had a responsibility, so the hotel director ran over with a face full of annoyance, apologizing, giving a small gift, waiving the bill, and providing meal vouchers for morning and evening, but just not mentioning allowing Komaeda Nagito to stay a few more days. The police even came. If it weren't for knowing that the police are currently too busy to deal with minors staying alone at the hotel actually really wished for Komaeda Nagito to disappear from their hotel today. Even if Komaeda Nagito isn't satisfied with their service attitude, the hotel still had to act according to the rules, and they had truly done everything they could. Komaeda Nagito actually didn't care. He had already promised to stay at Kudo Shinichi's house. As long as he can continue through today, it's enough, because he really doesn't want to keep struggling for a place to stay. Dazai Osamu also stayed behind. He went to Lupin too early today, so there was only himself. Coming to Komaeda-kun's place and even defusing a bomb, if he left now, wouldn't it seem like he came here specifically just to help with the bomb? Dazai Osamu, already familiar with the situation, took a simple shower in Komaeda Nagito's room, washing off the dust and sticky feeling from handling the bomb and climbing the elevator shaft, then borrowed Komaeda Nagito's clothes to wear. After washing, he neither dried nor blew his hair, letting it drip wet as he walked out, without any discomfort as he continued the topic from before the elevator event. Komaeda-kun, it seems like you still haven't answered my question. Have you encountered anything strange recently? Komaeda Nagito had finished washing, lying on the bed while looking at his phone, and upon hearing Dazai Osamu's question, he thought for a bit. If I have to say something, 2 days ago I lost a USB, but then I found one that's almost identical to mine. Oh, Dazai Osamu, who initially looked bored, suddenly had his eyes light up. Did you check the contents of the USB? No, it has a password, Komaeda Nagito replied. He considered giving it to the police, but for Komaeda Nagito, this USB might bring either good luck or misfortune, so he decided to wait for a while. If nothing happened, he would then hand it over to the police. Dazai Osamu didn't ask to see what was on the USB. He simply said, the person tailing you is probably the owner of the USB. I see. Komaeda Nagito trusted Dazai Osamu's judgment. Kudo-kun said this person was waiting for me at the school gate. Perhaps we can meet tomorrow, and I'll return it to him then. At that moment, Dazai Osamu's phone suddenly rang. He took it out and glanced at it, then pressed the mute button. Facing someone who relentlessly clings, even coming for a second time, and even a third. Komaeda Nagito couldn't help but say, Dazai-kun, aren't you going to answer the phone? After all, it's still the Port Mafia. There might be something very important. Not answering the phone, couldn't that mean missing something important? Dazai Osamu looked at his phone with a frustrated expression. I know what the boss wants to say, really, it can be done without me. He just can't stand me being idle. He clearly said I wouldn't need to be so busy for me to agree to become an executive. Suddenly, Dazai Osamu seemed to remember something. He turned his head to look at Komaeda Nagito, blinking. Komaeda Nagito. Komaeda-kun. Dazai Osamu suddenly became enthusiastic. Could you answer this call for me? If he asks where I am, just tell him that I'm currently unable to take the call. Alright. Although the request was a bit strange, Komaeda Nagito generally wouldn't refuse a request from Hope. It's an honor to help Dazai-kun. Thus, Dazai Osamu sat down at the edge of Komaeda Nagito's bed, pressed the call button, and then placed the phone to Komaeda Nagito's ear. Dazai-kun, you're certainly taking your time with this call. Komaeda Nagito gently cleared his throat. Sorry, Dazai-kun is currently unable to take the call. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Komaeda-kun. Mori-san still remembers me, what an honor. Komaeda Nagito's tone heated up, then he started to improvise. Sorry, because the phone kept ringing, I was worried that Dazai-kun might miss something important, so I took the liberty of answering his phone. I hope you don't mind. Mori Ogai, feeling conflicted, I don't really mind. Even the owner of the phone, Dazai Osamu, didn't mind. That said, although he did say Dazai Osamu should frequently interact with Komaeda Nagito to gather intel, he really didn't expect that one day he would call Dazai Osamu, only for Komaeda Nagito to answer. What exactly is the situation that could make Dazai-Osamu throw his phone to Komaeda Nagito, and doesn't want to see a family member? One has to say, Mori Ogai is very familiar with Dazai-Osamu. With a bit of imagination, he suspected that Dazai-Osamu didn't want to answer his call, so he deliberately passed it to Komaeda Nagito. Moreover, Dazai-Osamu's phone isn't something that can be discarded after one use. It's definitely encrypted, and Mori Ogai didn't believe that Dazai-Osamu would directly tell Komaeda Nagito the password. So Mori Ogai somewhat clearly tried saying, "But I'm really surprised. I didn't expect you two to be so close, with Dazai-kun even giving you his phone's password." "It's not like that," Komaeda Nagito said quite calmly. "I just wanted to take a look at the display, but I must have accidentally touched something, and the call went through." Mori Ogai. His first reaction was disbelief. This flimsy excuse was about as trustworthy as saying, "Teacher, I actually did my homework, I just didn't bring it." But recalling Komaeda Nagito's information, Mori Ogai couldn't find the words to argue. Considering Komaeda Nagito, it really does feel somewhat plausible. "Are you in a hurry to find Dazai-kun?" Komaeda Nagito asked courteously. "Actually, the matter isn't very urgent, but what exactly is Dazai-kun doing? Why can't he answer the phone?" Mori Ogai followed up with the question. Dazai-Osamu, for the sake of holding the phone in a more comfortable position, leaned his entire body against Komaeda Nagito. Water droplets from his still wet hair rolled down into Komaeda Nagito's collar, causing him to shiver a bit. Komaeda Nagito had no choice but to reach out and take the phone, conveniently getting some inspiration from Dazai-Osamu's dripping wet hair. "He's taking a shower. At this hour?" Mori Ogai glanced suspiciously at the clock on the side. Because of the fire drill in the afternoon, which ended and was followed directly by school dismissal, even though Dazai-Osamu and Komaeda Nagito were exhausted for a moment in the elevator, they even had to make police reports, but in fact, it was still early. Dazai-Osamu was completely unperturbed, his face full of interest as he watched, waiting for Komaeda Nagito to continue his free play. Because dismantling bombs can get quite messy, it's necessary to clean up a bit. Komaeda Nagito thought there was no need to hide this anyway. If Mori Ogai wanted to know, he could definitely find out, so he spoke plainly. Mori Ogai fell silent. Port Mafia's intelligence network in Yokohama was still relatively well connected, but after all, they had only just established a firm foothold in Yokohama for less than a year. Their influence hadn't yet extended as far as Tokyo, so it was surprising that they could gather such peculiar information from just a phone call. Why dismantle bombs? Where were these bombs dismantled? How did these bombs relate to them? 3 questions consecutively came to his mind. Mori Ogai carefully asked, "What happened?" Komaeda Nagito then briefly recounted what had just occurred. Although Dazai-Osamu didn't need to hold the phone at the moment, he stayed close to hear what Mori Ogai had to say. Instead of distancing himself, he found a more comfortable eavesdropping position, unconsciously leaning more than half of his body weight against Komaeda Nagito. He was imagining Mori Ogai's current expression while suppressing his laughter. After listening to Komaeda Nagito's explanation, Mori Ogai's face was full of indescribable complexity. "So, the truth is that Dazai-kun made a trip to Tokyo and even did a favor for the explosive ordnance disposal team. Dazai-kun still hasn't finished washing yet?" Mori Ogai asked. Komaeda Nagito, although feeling that both sides represent hope, decided that since he had already agreed to Dazai-Osamu first, he needed to properly fulfill the task for Dazai-Osamu. Thus, without changing his expression, he continued fabricating. "Actually, when the phone rang earlier, I went to call him, but there was no movement in the bathroom. He might have tried to commit suicide again." Mori Ogai. Dazai-Osamu. Even Dazai-Osamu didn't expect Komaeda Nagito to still be able to think of reusing old material for this. "Last time I accidentally interrupted Dazai-kun's suicide attempt, I felt really guilty, so this time I decided to wait patiently outside." Mori Ogai had heard beforehand from Dazai-Osamu that at Komaeda Nagito's room, Komaeda Nagito had only watched without helping when Dazai attempted suicide. Therefore, When this statement came from Komai de Nagito, Mori Ogai felt it was well substantiated and credible. Although he didn't really believe that Dazai Osamu would drown himself, such suffering wasn't in line with Dazai's preferences. Considering Dazai's frequent whims, Mori Ogai still said, to prevent any unforeseen circumstances, Komaeda-kun, Dazai-kun is a very important executive of our port mafia. Yeah, I know, Dazai-kun is very capable. Mori Ogai gently added, even if he gets a cold or fever, it would affect a lot of work for our port mafia, so Dazai-kun must not have anything happen to him. Of course, I trust that Dazai-kun is truly that important. Mori Ogai. Don't just blindly trust him. Go and do something instead. Mori Ogai found himself somewhat distressed, realizing that even as the port mafia boss, he had no way of dealing with Komai de Nagito. This kid seemed not to care about anything, and targeting him could mean bringing bad luck to himself, which is why he had Dazai Osamu handle the investigation. Fine, anyway, if Dazai-kun stays at Komai de Nagito's, it could still be considered work, and the matter on his side wasn't something that only Dazai Osamu could deal with, so he could assign someone else for now. Finally, Mori Ogai could only exchange a few meaningless words with Komai de Nagito, listen to Komai de Nagito blow a rainbow of praises, and then say goodbye to each other. This phone call was made in vain, and after hanging up, Mori Ogai still didn't know whether Dazai Osamu was really as Komai de Nagito had said or was simply slacking off again. After finishing the phone call, Komai de Nagito returned the phone to Dazai Osamu. Dazai Osamu looked at him in astonishment and sighed. Komai-de-kun, you're truly beyond my expectations. All sorts of awkward tactics that he couldn't have imagined, yet he could picture Mori Ogai's conflicted face on the other side, unsure whether to believe or not. Especially for this reason, if it was someone else, Mori Ogai would know 100% it's just an excuse, but since the person in question is Komai de Nagito, Mori Ogai has to be half-believing. Komai-de-kun's capability in this aspect is truly irreplaceable. Thank you. Komai de Nagito sighed. But Mori-san is right, Dazai-kun is very important. If Dazai-kun doesn't plan to die from a cold or a fever, it's better to dry off that hair. Dazai Osamu pondered. Now that you mention it, I truly hadn't considered that possibility, but thinking about it now, the mortality rate from catching a cold or fever does seem a bit low. And it's easy to get muddle-headed with a fever, Komai de Nagito added. If not only does it fail to kill you, but you end up as a fool, then it really feels like hope being defeated by despair, making him despair. Dazai Osamu shivered slightly with a disgusted expression. Ugh, I definitely don't want to turn into an idiot. Being unable to breathe for too long could leave similar after effects, so with that in mind, hanging should also be eliminated as an option, Komai de Nagito seriously analyzed for him. Speaking of this, Dazai Osamu suddenly spoke with great interest, the book you gave me last time was very useful. I studied it for a few days and then had a subordinate buy me mushrooms. Although the probability of dying is low, I still hope for a new experience. Moreover, recently I've also learned a bit about cooking, planning to make some mushroom hot pot myself. Komai-de-kun, would you like to try it? Ha, I'd better not. Komai de Nagito smiled wryly, refusing. With the exam coming up, I should do my best to maintain a good state. Only at times like this can one truly feel it. Dazai Osamu, like a mischievous child, said with a subtly emotional tone. Komai-de-kun is really a student, Komai de Nagito, a student, went to school the next day as usual. In contrast to before, when Dazai Osamu would sometimes disappear without warning, this time, Dazai didn't wake up from oversleeping. He merely waved from under the covers when Komai de Nagito said, I'm heading off to school, as he left through the front door. Komai de Nagito wasn't concerned and went to school as usual. However, when he arrived at the main hall, he noticed a slightly gloomy-looking young boy sitting in the resting area, coughing. The boy was glaring fiercely at the phone in his hand, as if he wanted to crush it. As Komai de Nagito walked by, a hotel staff member approached the boy with a slightly stiff smile and inquired something of him. Little friend. Ahem, sir, are you still waiting for that person? It's already been an hour, hasn't it? Could it be that they've already left? The young boy, whose hair was all black except for the white tips, replied coldly, no, he must still be here. But you called, and no one picked up. He's still here. You sent a message, but there's no response. He must still be here. The staff member hesitated, his eyes filled with the thought, could it be that the other person simply doesn't want to meet you? Unfortunately, the other party didn't understand this at all. Komaeda Nagito sighed internally, not even knowing which guardian was being so irresponsible, then acted as if nothing happened and walked out of the hotel, heading towards the school. Kudo Shinichi came looking for him again at noon. Kudo Shinichi, looking rather speechless, said, I thought you, senpai, getting stalked was already pretty bad, but I didn't expect you to get caught up in a bomb incident as well. While eating breakfast and watching the news this morning, he almost spat out his coffee. Although the news has yet to release an image of the victim, based on the timing of the incident and the age of the victim. Could Kudo Shinichi not deduce that Komaeda Nagito and Dazai Osamu were also involved? Komaeda Nagito sighed. That's why I said, getting too close to me won't lead to anything good happening. See Dazai-kun, you should understand by now. Kudo Shinichi ignored this and curiously asked, the news wiped out a lot of details, didn't they say it wasn't that serious? Could it be that Dazai-san disarmed the bomb? Komaeda Nagito nodded. Okay. Kudo Shinichi confirmed his deduction but was also not in a rush to stand up. Although everyone returned safely this time, what about the next time? Moreover, there was still the problem of the stalker that hadn't been resolved. Ah, about the stalker. Hearing Kudo Shinichi's concern, Komaeda Nagito said, Dazai-kun said it might be the owner of the USB I picked up. That's possible. Kudo Shinichi hesitated. So you guys mistakenly exchanged each other's USB, and then he found information about senpai from the USB? Then why did he run away yesterday? Wouldn't it have been better to just come and ask directly? Komaeda Nagito shrugged. Kudo Shinichi wondered for a moment. Not good, I now also feel that the content in that USB seems to have some issues. Otherwise, they could have come openly. Actually, it's also possible that it's not the USB owner's doing, but rather someone else bringing a stalker. Let's talk after class, maybe we can just ask directly after seeing them. Kudo Shinichi squinted his eyes. Senpai, you do seem to be in a bit of danger here. Regardless of the reason, a stalker is still a stalker. You need to have the right attitude. Don't wait until something happens to regret it. Hopefully, they just came to retrieve the USB. While Kudo Shinichi was waiting, class dismissal time had already arrived. He and Komaeda Nagito waited at the school gate for a while, but the person they were waiting for never came. So, he let Komaeda Nagito wait alone while he went to take a look around the nearby area, but still didn't see the other party. It's very possible that they're just an obsessive stalker, unrelated to the USB, Kudo Shinichi said seriously. Senpai, you must be extra careful these days. Honestly, I think it'd be better if you moved out sooner. He already knows you're staying at a hotel, and although he didn't follow you in yesterday, sneaking into a hotel isn't that difficult. Just think about it, a bomb could easily be brought in as well. Alright. Komaeda Nagito accepted Kudo Shinichi's good intention. Then let's move in on Friday. Honestly, there's not much stuff. Kudo Shinichi finally felt relieved. That's good. Two people living together, no matter what, is definitely safer than living alone, right? Chapter 46 End. Chapter 47, Home Invasion. It wasn't until Friday that Komaeda Nagito moved temporarily into Kudo Shinichi's house. Komaeda Nagito still hadn't seen the person who had been following him again, so there was no opportunity yet to confirm if it was because of the USB. I asked around the police station, and no one came to ask if someone had found a USB. Either the content isn't important despite being encrypted, so they're too lazy to retrieve it, or they just don't want to go to the police station. Kudo Shinichi was quite interested in the USB. Has the password not been cracked yet? No. Komaeda Nagito had really been in a rush lately. After finishing his school assignments, he immediately worked on the assignments that Natsume-sensei had given him, which included writing the outline of Crime and Punishment. He didn't have time to look into the USB at all. I'll hand it over to the police in a few days. It seemed like it was just an unfortunate mix-up with the wrong USB. He had thought there might be something more interesting happening. True. Handing it over to the police is for the best. Kudo Shinichi patted the suitcase Komaeda Nagito had brought along. But speaking of which, is this all your luggage, senpai? Yes. Komaeda Nagito shrugged. Most of it is actually back in Yokohama. I didn't have much stuff here in Tokyo to begin with. If needed, I can just buy most of what I need here. Kudo Shinichi didn't worry too much about this matter. Anyway, since you're moving in, just stay wherever you want until the place on the other side is ready. My parents are aware too. Not only were they aware, but they also wanted him to take good care of his upperclassmen. Although his senpai was a year older, considering his health issues and the bad luck of getting hit by a can of Coke this afternoon, Kudo Shinichi felt that taking a bit more care of his senpai was perfectly reasonable. Actually, the house just became available. Kudo Shinichi was shocked. That fast? Komaeda Nagito smiled and said, the paperwork isn't done yet, but the landlord was so happy that I readily accepted the house, and they heard about my current situation from the agent, so they directly gave me the key. The agent also helped me change the doorplate directly. Kudo Shinichi was stunned. Is that even possible? But since no one has lived there for some time, it still needs a thorough cleaning first, Komaeda Nagito said. I shouldn't trouble Kudo-kun for too long, rest assured. If it weren't for the hotel rushing him to leave, he actually could have stayed a few more days and moved straight into the new place. Unfortunately, for now, he could only stay at the Kudo residence. I'm actually fine, but do you really want to clean all by yourself? I'm quite good at cleaning. That's not what I meant. Kudo Shinichi rubbed his forehead, considering his words carefully without directly offering to help. Earlier you said, after the rooms are cleared, you'll let me see the scene. Komaeda Nagito suddenly understood. Of course, I haven't forgotten. Though, there shouldn't be anything extra left behind. Does Kudo-kun want to go today? Let's go, Kudo Shinichi said. Might as well bring the cleaning tools along. Thus, the two moved their luggage from the hotel to the Kudo residence, and then immediately went out again without much rest. Komaeda Nagito recently bought a house not far from Kudo Shinichi's home. From the second floor of the Kudo residence, one could directly see Komaeda Nagito's place. Carrying things over wasn't tiring at all, and Kudo Shinichi was even a bit intrigued. Having a friend's house so close by was indeed quite an attractive idea for a child, and Kudo Shinichi had already planned out how to arrange his time after school in the future. They arrived at the door, looked at the newly changed Komaeda nameplate, took out the key, and entered. The house was a bit chaotic, and later someone would need to come and properly repair it, but it seemed like the house had been tidied up quite well, probably because they wanted to show it to others. The two didn't hurry to clean the place up, instead, they first took a tour around. Kudo Shinichi pointed to the tatami that, despite efforts to clean it up, still had some bloodstains. Is this where the death occurred? Yes, Komaeda Nagito replied. The kitchen, the spare bedroom, the second floor, and the attic all show signs of the victim moving around, especially the study on the second floor. It was thoroughly rummaged. Kudo Shinichi immediately asked, what about the book? The police investigated. Although some pages had been torn off, there was no trace of any clues, and the landlord got rid of it, feeling it was unlucky. Kudo Shinichi looked regretful. I see. I think he kept moving around in this room without any purpose. Maybe he left some kind of hint or something. But there's nothing we can do now. When an ordinary person is being chased, shouldn't they be running away quickly? How could they waste time exploring a strange room? After a quick round, It felt like some time had passed since the incident, and sweeping through again, there really was no clue left. Kudo Shinichi gave up and started to clear out a bedroom on the second floor together with Komaeda Nagito. Since Komaeda Nagito didn't cook and had no immediate need to entertain guests in the living room, it made sense to first organize a place to stay, avoiding the inconvenience of always relying on others. Over the next couple of days, they slowly tidied up, adding in some necessary furniture, airing the place out, until it felt just about right. "Are you going back to Yokohama this weekend?" Kudo Shinichi asked while wiping the window. Komaeda Nagito, fully armed, wearing a mask and an apron, stepped onto a chair to use a broom to clean the spiderwebs behind the door, his voice muffled as he said, "No, there's quite a lot going on here in Tokyo. There's really no need to go back. Then tomorrow, let's go look at furniture. Do you want to buy new or second-hand?" The landlord hadn't moved everything out. For example, the bookshelf in the study and some furniture in the living room were still there, but things like the bed had to be purchased anew. Japan's second-hand furniture industry is thriving. Many items after refurbishment are almost indistinguishable from brand new ones, and the prices are much more affordable. However, Komaeda Nagito wasn't lacking in money, and Kudo Shinichi wasn't sure about his spending habits, so he directly asked. "Second-hand is fine," Komaeda Nagito said calmly. "After all, there's no guarantee how long it will last." Kudo Shinichi thought for a moment about Komaeda Nagito's luck and found it reasonable. The two of them worked in this room until it got dark. They eventually made it acceptable and directly left the cleaning tools in this room before heading back to the Kudo residence together. Because they were a bit tired, the two ordered bento boxes and thus settled dinner simply. Afterwards, they sat together in the living room to do their homework, and having company felt quite new. By around 10 p.m., the two teenagers started to feel a bit weary. "Good night." "Wait. Hold on." Halfway through their goodnight exchange, Kudo Shinichi suddenly called out. Komaeda Nagito looked over in confusion. "Kudo-kun, is there something else?" "Komaeda-senpai." While pulling the curtains, Kudo Shinichi stared out the window and waved at Komaeda Nagito. "Come here quickly." Komaeda Nagito leaned closer and immediately understood why Kudo Shinichi's expression had suddenly changed. "Komaeda-senpai, is that light over there coming from your house?" Kudo Shinichi carefully confirmed. "It doesn't seem like a light bulb." "Ah, it moved. It's a flashlight." "At this hour, could it be the agent bringing someone to view the house?" "Even though the process isn't done, they do have the keys, and it's the middle of the night." Kudo Shinichi was eager. "Senpai, should we go take a look first? If something seems off, we'll quickly call the police." Komaeda Nagito agreed. Kudo Shinichi and Komaeda Nagito put on their coats and hurried out the door. Kudo Shinichi even set up an emergency shortcut on his phone, ready to call the police as soon as they confirmed that the people inside weren't the agent or former homeowners coming back to look for their things. When the two of them arrived outside the house, they found that the door lock was still intact. Kudo Shinichi's eyes scanned the area. They climbed over the wall from that side. To enter, they had to climb the wall, which seemed even more suspicious. Komaeda Nagito used the key to unlock the gate, quietly pushed it open, and together with Kudo Shinichi, tried to circle around to the back door of the house. As they were heading towards their destination, they suddenly heard a very strange noise. "It's like there's a fight going on in there," Kudo Shinichi whispered. "One person after another, non-stop." Komaeda Nagito nodded silently. Kudo Shinichi retreated to the side and quietly made a phone call to report the situation. Hearing the screams from inside, Kudo Shinichi began to grow restless, worried that someone inside might lose their life, though he knew that if he went in, it would only put himself in danger. He could only hope the police would arrive quickly. They quietly opened the back door but didn't go in. Instead, they listened in silence. After the sound of someone seemingly falling down the stairs, the voices of people talking inside became much clearer. Wait, I mean no harm. I just want to look for something." "Hey, can you actually listen to me?" You don't need to stay silent like this. Are you trying to kill me? This isn't even your house. Isn't this that kid's house? Kudo Shinichi anxiously analyzed. The attacker and the one being attacked weren't from the same group. One of them seemed rather inexperienced, as if they were here to find something, and seemed to know Komaeda-senpai. The other one was ruthless, not saying much, and gave off a much more professional vibe in illegal activities. Ah. Komaeda Nagito suddenly realized something. Could this person be here to find the USB? It's possible, Kudo Shinichi said with a strange expression. But why come here to find the USB instead of going to my house? Because the house plate says Komaeda. After a few exchanges like that, there was no more movement inside, and the sounds of screams and fleeing vanished together. Kudo Shinichi's eyes changed. It can't be that. Murder. Komaeda Nagito hurriedly pulled on Kudo Shinichi, who seemed to want to go inside. Kudo-kun, there's still someone in there. Moreover, it seems like it's a really fierce person. Kudo Shinichi gritted his teeth. I just feel like there's still a chance to save him. It's also possible they were just knocked unconscious, Komaeda Nagito said. You shouldn't rush, the police will be here soon. The other person could be the murderer of the previous case, Kudo Shinichi quickly said. He's already killed once, he wouldn't hesitate to kill again. If killing is easier than knocking someone out, he would definitely choose to kill, because the other person might have seen his face. But what could you possibly do if you go in? Komaeda Nagito calmly said. If you're discovered, do you want to provoke him into killing again? That person must also be looking for something, but I don't understand. Any clue should have already been cleaned up, so why is he still so persistent? In short, he's looking for something. It might not still be there, but this is an opportunity. Komaeda Nagito looked at Kudo Shinichi, who had an expression that seemed to burn with some kind of belief, and sighed. Although the idea is really good, it's too reckless. And besides, I don't think that person is worth Kudo-kun risking his life to save. I know, senpai, that you're worried about me. But when a person's life is in front of you, it's not about whether it's worth it or not. Besides, it's not like I have nothing at all. Kudo Shinichi took out a strange object, which looked like a toy water gun. My neighbor invented this a while back and gave me one, so I brought it with me when I left. Komaeda Nagito looked at it strangely. What is this? It's like a spider web shot. In short, press this button, and it will shoot in one direction, creating a net big enough to cover something like a large refrigerator. Kudo Shinichi's lips twitched. It's very sticky, so if the opponent is near a wall at that moment, it could even stick them to the wall. You could understand it as a web-like adhesive with enhanced strength. Originally, the professor got the idea from Spider-Man, intending to invent a toy for children. But after this gadget was created, it wasn't very safe and ended up as a failed product that had to be shelved. Now, it seems like it could be developed and put to great use in another field. However, Komaeda Nagito looked at this toy-like spider web-shaped object, feeling truly unable to muster any sense of trust in his heart. Are you sure you want to use this to chase down a murderer? Kudo Shinichi was silent. Komaeda Nagito sighed. If Kudo-kun insists, then I'll go in and take a look. Kudo-kun is much more important than I am. Just call for an ambulance outside. No, let's not act recklessly. When we called for help, we already asked for an ambulance to come as well, since we considered the possibility that the murderer might return to the scene. Who knows what they might do, so we have to be prepared for the worst. Kudo Shinichi, who had been full of enthusiasm earlier, immediately calmed down when he saw that his senior wanted to take risks in his stead. It was fine for him to sacrifice himself to save someone whose life or death was uncertain, but having others risk themselves for his sake was something Kudo Shinichi couldn't accept. Now it was Kudo Shinichi's turn to persuade Komaeda Nagito not to act impulsively. I was wrong earlier. Although in the last case, the killer didn't make a fatal blow, maybe that was to extract information. This time, it's unrelated people, and they might kill directly. I wouldn't be able to do much even if I went in. Plus, judging by the time, the police should be arriving soon. Someone might be asking for help out of their own wish, just imagining that a life would be lost right in front of them. Although there's no need to take risks, it's also impossible to be cheerful about it. Seeing Kudo Shinichi suddenly become dejected, Komaeda Nagito comforted him. Wanting to save someone isn't a bad thing. Kudo-kun looks so dazzling that way. I just hope you consider the real situation a bit. Or are you hiding the identity of some wrestler or boxing master, Kudo-kun? With Kudo-kun's intelligence, you certainly wouldn't just go off to die without a plan, right? Kudo Shinichi. Is this supposed to be comforting? Why does it feel like he's being mocked for not knowing his own limits? But after calming down and thinking it over, maybe his idea just now was a bit strange. Even though he didn't hear any gunshot, who knows if that person might have a gun. Holding a weapon, no different from a toy gun, truly seems like courting death. Moreover, if something really happens to him, dying in Komaeda-senpai's house, and having come here with Komaeda-senpai, his parents, no matter how rational, would end up venting their anger on Komaeda-senpai. It feels like he's only causing more trouble for Komaeda-senpai. Kudo Shinichi obediently apologized. I'm sorry. I understand, senpai. Komaeda Nagito smiled, speaking in a very formulaic manner. Kudo-kun is only 14 years old, after all. You have seen many works about heroism, so you think too much. I mean, it's normal for thoughts to be incomplete at this age, but the desire to save people is certainly not wrong. Kudo Shinichi, you're also only 15, senpai. Changing the phrasing to thoughts are incomplete, didn't you really mean thinking too much? I don't actually have the delusion that I'm like Holmes and can solve everything. But being 14 really does have its limits. He really hopes he can grow up soon, that way he can act when he sees injustices without worrying too much. The police still haven't arrived. Komaeda Nagito glanced at his watch. Almost 10 minutes. Kudo Shinichi calculated the time. It should be soon. I can hear the sound of the siren. They weren't the only ones who heard it, the people inside the house heard it too. Komaeda Nagito and Kudo Shinichi, worried that the person inside might leave through the door, moved away from both the front and back entrances. They hid behind a small shed in the yard, only to see a strong figure suddenly jump out of the second-floor window, land on a tree branch in the yard, and then directly leap outside the yard without even touching the wall. The entire process was smooth like flowing water, and in almost the blink of an eye, that person vanished from their sight. Kudo Shinichi looked stunned. Ah, this. That skill, if he had entered and been discovered just now, he really would have been a goner. Ah. Komaeda Nagito, however, was uncharacteristically silent. Because he realized that the person just now, in the moment they jumped down and were exposed in the streetlight, looked somewhat familiar. After waiting for 3 seconds and hearing the sound of the person running away, Kudo Shinichi immediately rushed into the room, intending to find the person who was still inside, confirm if they were alive or not, and see if he could save them. This kind of respect and value for life was something Komaeda Nagito did not possess, but he really appreciated it, so he followed in as well. Komaeda Nagito entered, and immediately heard Kudo Shinichi say, "Not dead, just knocked unconscious." Really not dead, huh? Honestly speaking, Komaeda Nagito thought they couldn't save him. After all, that person as malicious wouldn't have too much sympathy, yet they still ended up sparing him. Kudo Shinichi, with a complicated mood, pulled down the person's tie, tied his hands behind his back, then leaned him against the wall. While trying to shake the person awake, he explained to Komaeda Nagito, "This is the stalker I encountered earlier." Komaeda Nagito. This crazy stalker messed up. Not only did they follow the wrong person, but they almost got killed by an even more dangerous guy. It's like a stalker case gone wrong. This person is practically useless now. After regaining consciousness in a panic, the stalker was dazed for a while. "Ah, my head hurts. I feel dizzy, and my stomach hurts too, that guy really hit hard just now. Huh, where am I? Ah, Komaeda. Sorry, Komaeda-san, please let me explain. Kudo Shinichi interrupted the rambling person. What's your name? Saito. Why are you here? To find the USB. Relying on simple questions and answers, this person explained everything clearly as the siren moved closer. Simply put, this stalker roughly learned a bit about Komaeda Nagito, discovered that he seemed quite familiar with the police, then panicked, went back to work while waiting for the police to come and arrest him, but until today no police came, so he went back to stalk again. On the way, he overheard them faintly talking about the USB, realizing that the USB was indeed in Komaeda Nagito's possession, which reignited a spark of hope in him. He followed Komaeda Nagito and Kudo Shinichi after school to their hotel, watched them unpack their luggage, return to the Kudo residence, then go from the Kudo residence to the Komaeda residence, only to return to the Kudo residence again, and then not return anymore. At this point, Saito felt that he had stumbled upon a great opportunity. Komaeda Nagito was staying at a friend's house, which meant that tonight there would be no one at the Komaeda residence, making it an ideal time to intrude. Upon hearing this, Kudo Shinichi couldn't help but say, haven't you considered the possibility that Komaeda-senpai might have brought the USB to my house? I did consider that. Saito said quietly, it's okay to search again. If I can't find it, I'll think of another way, but if I do find it, then it's worth it. Kudo Shinichi was at a loss for words. Moreover, the main point isn't whether he has the USB or not, right? Saito felt really wronged. I only realized it after coming in, this place doesn't look like someone lives here at all. There's no way he would leave anything here. Kudo Shinichi's eyes looked lifeless. Then what do you think the two of us are here for today with brooms and cleaning supplies? To help a fellow friend clean their room. Then why do you think senpai, if he already had a place, would stay at a hotel? I didn't think that far, there's always a reason. Reality is always full of strange twists and turns, isn't it? You really make a good point. Komaeda Nagito sighed deeply. So, what exactly is on this USB that makes it worth all this trouble? Company information. What kind of company? Kudo Shinichi asked sharply. If it were legitimate company information, you would have directly asked after knowing the USB was with Komaeda-senpai. Why go through such a big hassle? Could it be an illegal company? Saito started playing dead. The police will be here in less than a minute. You'll have to talk sooner or later, Kudo Shinichi urged. Hurry up, since the USB is in senpai's hands, the police will crack the code quickly anyway. If you talk now, it might still count as a confession. No wonder it's a path filled with countless unimaginable outcomes, ending up in this kind of situation. This little fool actually believed it and confessed such a ghost story. It's a murder contractor company. When I joined, I didn't know either. Honestly, I've always wanted to report it, but the last colleague who said they'd report it ended up being killed. The police car had stopped outside the door, and the sound of approaching footsteps signaled the end of tonight's comedic act, with the final curtain ready to fall. Kudo-kun, I'll leave this place to you. Kudo Shinichi saw Komaeda Nagito heading in the direction of the restroom and, without suspicion, replied, all right, I'll handle explaining the situation. After Komaeda Nagito entered the restroom, he took out his phone and dialed a number. A few seconds later, the call connected, but the person on the other end said nothing, not even a sound of breathing could be heard. Ah, it's me. Komaeda Nagito spoke. Sir, I'm really sorry to bother you, but the FBI agent from before infiltrated my house tonight, knocked out a stalker who was tailing me, and escaped before the police arrived. I don't know what he intended to do, so I wanted to ask if you happen to know anything about this situation. Morofushi Hiromitsu, who is working for the National Police Agency in his childhood friend's stead. Wait a second. Akai Shuichi, infiltration, and a stalker. Too many factors. What on earth is going on here? Chapter 47 End. Chapter 48, The Rogue Three-Man Team and the Author Celebration Event. After roughly understanding the situation, Morofushi Hiromitsu hung up Komaeda Nagito's call and contacted his childhood friend who was still undercover in the black organization. Bourbon. He addressed the other person by their codename in the liquor factory. This way, even if someone overheard, they would assume that it was an informant, a perfectly normal scenario since Bourbon was an intelligence agent, right? Having a few informants wasn't that unusual. Amuro Toru, who called himself that in front of Komaeda Nagito, with his real name being Furuya Rei, a Japanese police officer, raised an eyebrow. Speak, what happened? Morofushi Hiromitsu then relayed the information he had received from Komaeda Nagito to Furuya Rei and asked, is this an action by the FBI, or is it an action by the organization? Furuya Rei was speechless for a moment. I'll go inquire a bit. What a mess this all is. Could it really be that Akai Shuichi saw a stalker and then just decided to be a hero? And why is it Komaeda Nagito again? It's only been less than a month since they met, yet why does it feel like he's everywhere? Furuya Rei went to make some inquiries. That traitor over there, leaving the organization's intel in that room? Furuya Rei immediately understood. You made Rai go look for the intel. The police have already gone there multiple times and found nothing. Are you using revenge to settle the case? Rai is an undercover agent sent by the FBI, Akai Shuichi. Vermouth lit a cigarette. Back then, it was tequila chasing after the target, because he couldn't find the chip on that traitor's person. So, based on the way he circled the house for half a day, it's presumed that he hid the chip somewhere in the house. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough time for a thorough search. Now that things have calmed down, we have Rai go check it out. But why are you asking about this? Still not getting along with Rai? That Scotch credit originally belonged to me, Furuya Rei said without changing his expression. If it had been me, we might have been able to capture him alive and get some intel. But that Rai guy acted too fast. After sending Vermouth off with a casual excuse, Furuya Rei fell into deep thought. The data stolen by the undercover FBI agent. If only the Japanese police could get it, that would be great. Harboring the idea of taking advantage of the situation, Furuya Rei went to his subordinates to find information on this incident, intending to see what the situation was. The result was shocking. No wonder this case was only officially announced as a simple burglary. That stalker turned out to be more than just an ordinary stalker, it involved a major case. Now, the entire police department is busy because of the USB content submitted by Komaeda Nagito. This is essentially a massive killing industry network, on a completely different level compared to both legal and illegal organizations, practically delivering achievements to their doorstep, and everyone was quite enthusiastic. The USB's owner, being a witness to the blemish, was put under protection. Considering he hadn't killed anyone, only joined the wrong company as an innocent rookie for less than a month, they might later help him change his identity, and then reintroduce him into society. This case has nothing to do with the liquor factory, it was just because the USB was in Komaeda Nagito's hands that, when they went looking for it, they unfortunately ran into the FBI. Based on the liquor factory's habits, in fact, Akai Shuichi should have killed this person, but maybe because he was acting alone without any other organization members watching, the other party didn't clearly see his face, so he nearly just knocked them unconscious. Theoretically speaking, an illegal intruder, even if they wake up after he leaves, wouldn't have the courage to report it. The organization wouldn't know what had happened and naturally wouldn't suspect that he was being merciful and acting out of character. However, he didn't expect someone to report to the police. But fortunately, this Saito case is quite large, entering a classified mission. Akai Shuichi's actions have not yet been exposed to the organization. After reviewing the materials, Furuya Rei used Amuro Toru's mobile to contact Komaeda Nagito, saying he hoped to visit his house for a bit. The Japanese police had instructed officers not to pursue the unlawful entries anymore, so the police had left, making it convenient for Amuro Toru to take action. Komaeda Nagito naturally agreed, no need to be polite. Please, make yourself at home. Though there's still a bit of a smell inside, I hope you won't mind. After disguising himself, Furuya went to Komaeda Nagito's new place in the late afternoon, when the sky started to darken, and found the door unlocked, so he went straight inside. At the time of the incident where Tequila was pursuing the undercover FBI agent, Furuya and Morofushi Hiromitsu were occupied with other urgent work. They only heard that an undercover agent had been killed, but the specific circumstances were not very clear. After all, the organization was extremely secretive, and it wasn't possible for him to keep track of every member's mission. The Tokyo Metropolitan Police treated this case as an act of revenge and closed it, so the police didn't pay further attention to related matters. But now, if Furuya knew this, then he would definitely want to take a look. After all, based on the investigation of the murder case, there must be many clues left behind. It's just that Akai Shuichi, according to Komaeda Nagito's description, probably didn't have enough time to find it. In other words, he still had a chance. The study room was unnecessary, likely just a diversion. Besides, the books had all been collected and sold off. Therefore, it seemed that examining it wouldn't leave too many traces, except for a few spots. Furuya had already planned out his own investigation route. Unlike Akai Shuichi, he knew the homeowner and had plenty of time to search slowly. He felt that his chances of finding it were still quite high. Holding on to that thought, Furuya entered the room, wordlessly eyeing the other intruder. "Oh, Bourbon-san, long time no see." The youngest executive of the Port Mafia, Dazai-Osamu, sat leisurely with his legs crossed on the sofa left by the original homeowner in the living room. "Dazai-kun." Furuya took a deep breath. "Why are you here?" Dazai-Osamu tilted his head and laughed lightly. "After finishing work this morning, I wanted to go find Komaeda-kun to hang out. After all, the boss did say we should stay in touch frequently, didn't he? But when I got there, I found out that Komaeda-kun hadn't returned to Yokohama this week. After that, you came to Tokyo?" Furuya rubbed his forehead. "Komaeda-kun isn't here, ah. All that talk about staying in frequent contact." He didn't believe that Komaeda Nagito and Dazai-Osamu were truly friends, especially since the Port Mafia boss Mori Ogai was actively encouraging Dazai-Osamu and Komaeda Nagito to get along. No matter how he thought about it, it seemed suspicious. Unfortunately, he had a weakness in the other party's hands, so he didn't dare say anything. "Of course, I've already looked for Komaeda-kun. I know he's at the Kudo residence," Dazai-Osamu said. "I didn't expect something this interesting to happen yesterday, so I thought I'd come see for myself." Furuya fell silent. Why didn't Komaeda-kun mention that there would be others visiting? Dazai-Osamu, seemingly seeing through what Furuya was thinking, rested his chin on his hand and casually said, "Isn't it clear that for Komaeda-kun, he'd naturally lean towards me from now on?" Furuya recalled that time on the gambling ship when Komaeda Nagito dragged Dazai-Osamu away so that he could continue his work, and his expression subtly shifted. Is this guy holding a grudge? Unexpectedly, building a good relationship with Komaeda-kun at a critical moment turned out to be very important. But still, as the top of the police academy, Furuya analyzed Komaeda Nagito's personality a bit, and keenly realized that Dazai-Osamu was deceiving him. "Actually, it's just because I didn't tell Komaeda-kun to do me a favor and let me know if anyone else comes, right? Then you tell Komaeda-kun to do you a favor and make sure he doesn't tell me?" Furuya calmly said, "But with just that, Komaeda-kun won't agree. He would be more inclined to satisfy both of our requests simultaneously, which means not affecting any party. You also tell him that you know my identity, so it won't affect me carrying out my mission." As expected of Japan's ace police officer, Dazai-Osamu clapped lightly. "You really understand Komaeda-kun's personality well, huh?" Furuya let out a breath. "Not talking about that, did you discover anything?" "There it is." Dazai-Osamu displayed the chip that was wedged between his fingers towards Furuya. "Is this what you were looking for?" Furuya's gaze turned sharp. "Where did you find it?" "The toilet." "I figured as much." The toilet had fewer traces of disturbance, and with the murder weapon left at the crime scene, the police's attention was all focused on the study, drawn by what seemed like an attempt to leave behind a clue. They overlooked the possibility that the deceased might have hidden something. No one would bother to search seriously, especially for something as small as a chip. It could easily be hidden anywhere. Considering that after death, the landlord might sell the house, many furnishings could end up being disposed of, so it's best not to hide things in these pieces of furniture, to avoid making it harder for those searching for information. Therefore, moving out typically doesn't include taking the toilet, which makes it an ideal place to hide items, like in the water tank. It seems at first glance that one could see to the bottom without suspicion, but in reality, there's a mechanical structure that conceals the view, and most people wouldn't consider hiding such intricate items in water. But as long as waterproofing is done well, it doesn't actually need to be too complicated. A plastic sealed bag with a seal, and hiding the chip in the water tank is truly quite convenient. At the very least, it successfully deceived the Tokyo police. Although the police's goal wasn't to find the chip, and they wouldn't pay attention to such a mundane detail, it still requires strengthening education. Furuya tossed aside the thought of adding more lectures for the police members and focused on the main task at hand. So, Dazai-kun, what will it take for you to willingly hand over the chip to me? Dazai-osamu let out a soft chuckle. Well, that's something you'll have to ask yourself, dear police-san. What kind of deal do you plan to offer for the chip in my hands? Furuya narrowed his eyes slightly. This issue, are you representing the Port Mafia, or just yourself? The youngest executive of the Port Mafia lazily leaned on the sofa. Myself. Furuya's eyes brightened, attempting to say, you and the boss of the Port Mafia, is there perhaps some discord? If there really was discord, this would be big news. Maybe it could be used somehow. You're overthinking it. Dazai-osamu reminded, I just don't want to let Boss Mori benefit too much, that's all. With this level of deal, Mori-san doesn't care, while I look out for my own welfare. Besides, give up on that thought. Even if I really wanted to switch sides, I wouldn't join the police. Even the police wouldn't dare to take you in. Furuya snorted. Alright then, what do you want? Let me make it clear first. I'm not someone who would be willing to get this chip no matter what, so make your demands reasonable. Dazai-osamu directly threw the chip to Furuya. Put it on hold for now, we'll discuss it when the time comes. Deal. Furuya agreed without hesitation. After all, with Dazai-osamu's cunning intelligence, it wasn't likely he'd agree to anything unreasonable, and Dazai-osamu wouldn't demand anything too excessive either. Agreeing to a personal request from Dazai-osamu was much better than owing a favor to the boss of the Port Mafia, Mori Ogai. Ah. Furuya returned and handed the chip over to the Japanese police, allowing them to decode the information inside. No matter how much they could gather, it didn't matter much. After all, before paying any major price, it was equivalent to nothing. Who knows, Dazai-osamu might already be dead before making his request. It still felt worthwhile. Sharing the same train of thought as an insurance company, Furuya, after returning to the black organization, even used this incident to claim credit, beginning to lie with a straight face. Rai rarely makes a mistake, so I got curious and investigated a bit. Based on my intel, it seems the Japanese police have noticed something's wrong, and it looks like they want to take over yesterday's matter, planning a full investigation of the house. Vodka immediately started playing his supporting role. We can't find Rai, we can't find tequila either, but we're sure the item is in the house. The Japanese police have also sensed something's wrong. What should we do now, big bro? Jin took a drag of his cigarette. Burn it. Huh? Vodka tried to grasp the meaning. Do you mean burn the entire house directly? That's right. If we can't retrieve it, we should simply destroy it, Jin sneered. No one gets it, that's one way to resolve the problem. Surely that traitor wouldn't have hidden the chip underground, would he? Vodka admired him endlessly. Big bro, you're so wise. On the other side of the phone, Furuya. The truth is, this operation was quite normal, very organized. At first, they thought they might be able to steal it back, without alarming anyone, which would be ideal. Seeing how it failed, they decided to abandon the low-profile approach and return to the terrifying organization's usual style. Although hearing about this operation, Furuya wasn't too surprised, but this was the house that Komaeda-kun had just bought. Thus, Komaeda Nagito received a call from Furuya. Home insurance? Komaeda Nagito answered curiously. No, originally, I should have bought it together when buying the house, but the insurance company blacklisted me. Is something going to happen to my house? While at the Kudo residence, holding Kudo Yusaku's book, Dazai Osamu, lying on the couch across from Komaeda Nagito, suddenly smiled. Furuya faintly heard the laughter, and immediately knew it was Dazai Osamu. His heart sank slightly, but he still patiently said to Komaeda Nagito, "That's right, it's likely your house can't be saved. I can't disclose the specific situation. Is there anything you want as compensation?" Komaeda Nagito thought for a moment. No need, I'm actually quite looking forward to seeing what kind of luck this misfortune of my newly purchased house burning down will bring. Furuya was speechless, and could only turn around and instruct someone to look for another house for Komaeda Nagito, looking for an opportunity to make it up to him. After Komaeda Nagito hung up, Dazai Osamu put down the book, suppressing a laugh as he said, "Your house has to be burned down?" Didn't say it had to be burned. Komaeda Nagito pondered. But talking about destroying something, burning is the most common method. Dazai Osamu also agreed with this view. After all, he had planned several fires himself, all for the purpose of destroying evidence and the like. Looks like you're going to have to stay at your junior's place for a while, Dazai Osamu chuckled, but there are other ways. Komaeda Nagito tilted his head. What? I can testify and say that you're an ability user, and then the special division will probably send you back to that detective office next door, Dazai Osamu mused. Ah, but speaking of which, you'd definitely be under surveillance, so wouldn't it be really inconvenient for me to come find you? Komaeda Nagito gave a bitter smile. Ha ha ha, please don't joke. Clearly having no ability but still forcing oneself to pretend to be an ability user is truly blasphemous, and so disrespectful to real ability users. It's only natural that I got slapped around. Dazai Osamu. Shouldn't the focus be on being under surveillance? Even though the number of times staying with Komaeda Nagito was quite frequent, Dazai Osamu still found Komaeda Nagito's reactions sometimes very interesting. By the way, Dazai-kun, don't you have work today? Komaeda Nagito asked curiously. It feels like Dazai-kun always has a lot of free time. Because most of the tasks are already arranged well, what's giving me a headache right now is actually teaching my disciple, Dazai Osamu complained. That guy Akutagawa. Komaeda Nagito's fingers twitched slightly in a way that was not easy to notice, but outwardly, he still calmly asked, Akutagawa. That's right. Dazai Osamu looked at Komaeda Nagito with a pondering expression. Akutagawa Yunosuke, do you know him? I don't know him. Komaeda Nagito sincerely replied. Just recognizing a fellow person with a similar family name. Dazai Osamu made no comment. I see. He changed the topic. Oda Sako submitted his novel, and it got recommended by the editor for a major award. Did you know about this? I know. Speaking about this topic, Komaeda Nagito's emotions visibly surged. As expected of Oda-sensei, truly talented. That editor is so lucky, to be Oda-sensei's editor, it's really enviable. Bungo said he wants to hold a celebration party for Oda Sako. Bungo is also a friend of Oda Sako, just so you know. Do you want to go? Komaeda Nagito smiled shyly. Inviting me? He added, I haven't really done anything. Dazai Osamu interrupted him, just say if you're going or not. Right, Oda Sako often talks about you, saying that you helped him review his manuscript, and he's very grateful. If you don't come, he'll be really disappointed. Oda-san is just being too polite. Komaeda Nagito hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Well, I'll respectfully accept then. Dazai-osamu cheerfully concluded, "Alright, tomorrow I'll let you know where to go." After casually chatting about a few strange things that had recently happened to Komaeda Nagito, Dazai-osamu disappeared into the night. Dazai-osamu is truly someone who suits the night. When he wears a black suit and walks out into the dark night, a kind of dark charm suddenly emerges, yet in front of Komaeda Nagito, that side of him rarely shows itself. Kudo Shinichi waited until Dazai-osamu left before going downstairs to find Komaeda Nagito. Facing Dazai-osamu made him truly restless. This kind of situation, knowing full well that the person opposite should be imprisoned, yet unable to find any evidence, while the other party always has that provocative look, it was really infuriating. Dazai-osamu's provocation was clearly intended to make him leave, but hot-headed as ever, Kudo Shinichi fell for it and had no choice but to go upstairs to calm down a bit. However, he was also quite cunning as he didn't close the door, so he could vaguely hear some of what was being said downstairs. "Well, senpai?" Kudo Shinichi asked worriedly. "He didn't make you do anything, did he?" Kudo Shinichi was really worried that Komaeda senpai would rush into being used by someone. Even if it wouldn't cost him his life, there was simply no need for it. Couldn't he care a bit more about himself? "No problem, it's just that he invited me to attend an author's celebration party." Komaeda Nagito mused. "I'm wondering what kind of gift would be appropriate." Kudo Shinichi. Author? Celebration party? Does Dazai-osamu actually associate with such normal people? Komaeda Nagito didn't reveal much more information, so Kudo Shinichi understood that this wasn't something he should ask about. Although he was a bit curious, he decided to drop the topic and started helping Komaeda Nagito think of some ideas. If it's for an author, then paper and pen is a good choice. Kudo Shinichi's father is an author, so he has some say on this matter. Having a good pen, while it may not be an inspiration fountain, at least when you do get inspiration, it won't be hindered by random ink issues that cause frustration, ultimately making the inspiration drift away. Traditional authors still tend to use pen and paper, feeling that placing pen to paper makes them more deliberate. Even when submitting work, seeing a beautifully handwritten piece, traditional editors naturally have a slightly higher regard for it compared to a stamped manuscript. Komaeda Nagito initially thought the same way. Kudo Shinichi, as someone dedicated to being a detective, supplemented very seriously, but if many friends give the same thing, like a pen and paper, it can be rather awkward. Moreover, if he's using a computer to type, then this gift wouldn't work either. Has he mentioned if he's lacking anything recently? Komaeda Nagito shook his head. Actually there is another way. It might be a bit troublesome, but if you have the money, it should be doable. Kudo Shinichi said, if he's into writing, he probably has a favorite author or a favorite book. You could try to get a signed copy for him. Ah. Komaeda Nagito suddenly realized. Natsume-sensei. Kudo Shinichi's lips twitched slightly. He likes Natsume Soseki-sensei's book. That might be a bit difficult. Natsume Soseki-sensei doesn't give out signed books easily. You should either choose something else or just settle for standard pen and paper. Komaeda Nagito enthusiastically shook Kudo Shinichi's hand. Thank you, Kudo-kun, for your great help. Previously, when Natsume Soseki accepted him as a disciple, Komaeda Nagito had requested an autograph before he left, adding it to the book he and Oda Sakanosuke discussed the most. Although he was a bit reluctant, since Oda-san valued it so highly, and considering it might be destroyed in his hands someday, it was better to give it to Oda-san, who would definitely cherish it as much as he did. Too bad it's nighttime, not suitable to go out, otherwise he would return to Yokohama now to get the book. Speaking of which, being enthusiastically shaken by Komaeda Nagito, Kudo Shinichi awkwardly withdrew his hand, remembering the question he originally wanted to ask, and tried saying, when you guys chat, is it usually Komaeda-senpai who talks more? Yes, that's right. Komaeda Nagito admitted, smiling. Dazai-kun seems to really enjoy hearing about the things that happen around me. After all, there are a lot of unexpected things, right? It's like listening to a story, and with his work being so tiring, maybe he comes here specifically for a bit of amusement. Kudo Shinichi's expression turned somewhat strange. No way, just to make fun of someone, it's not necessary to come in person, right? Couldn't he just hear it over the phone? However, recalling himself leaving the living room, coming down from upstairs and looking down, seeing that guy with a relaxed smile, Kudo Shinichi couldn't help but wonder. Maybe he really considered Senpai a friend? Impossible. Chapter 48 End. Chapter 49, Encountering Stubborn Kuin at the headquarters. The next day, Komaeda Nagito returned to Yokohama, intending to look for the book he planned to gift to Otasaka no Suke. Upon returning, he conveniently brought along the handwritten manuscripts of tens of thousands of words and then sent a message to his teacher, asking him to come and retrieve it. Actually, you don't need to keep pushing yourself like this, Natsume Soseki said when he arrived, still advising Komaeda Nagito, doesn't it give you headaches when you try too hard? Just take it slowly. Komaeda Nagito explained, Sensei, actually, when I recently tried to recall things, I found that this hypermnesia-like state seems to be gradually weakening. I'm worried that if I don't write it down quickly now, I won't be able to remember it later. Natsume Soseki nodded without surprise. That kind of state was never something you naturally had, it's likely just an aftereffect of two conflicting memories merging. Ultimately, it's an abnormal state. It would be best if you slowly return to a normal state afterward, otherwise, if it continues, new aftereffects might appear. No, actually, new symptoms aren't really a big deal. I just feel like I won't be able to continue helping Sensei much in the future, which makes me quite uneasy. Faced with Komaeda Nagito's enthusiasm, a cold sweat slowly ran down the back of Natsume Soseki's head. Your health is very important. You can't just focus on the present. If you really want to properly help this old man, then take better care of yourself. I can't come to you for help, only for your body to not be able to handle it. This statement was entirely meant to gently advise Komaeda Nagito to cherish his own body. Natsume Soseki really wasn't the type to meddle by asking a minor for help. Since he had accepted Komaeda Nagito as his disciple, it was only natural that he genuinely treated the other as such. Perhaps it was due to his age, but Natsume Soseki even felt like he was taking care of a grandson. He didn't have this kind of feeling toward his previous two disciples. Natsume Soseki collected his somewhat scattered thoughts, focused his mind, and looked at what Komaeda Nagito had handed over. He noticed that it wasn't just the opening of Crime and Punishment, but also parts from Notes from Underground, The Idiot, Demons, and so on. Each of them was about 30,000 to 40,000 characters. Oh. Natsume Soseki saw this work, which was different from the planned task, and without any anger, asked with quite some interest, you are aware of this old man's plan, but now it seems, you have a different idea. Previously, Sensei and I came to a similar conclusion, that the works of authors from another world may be closely connected to the abilities of ability users in this world. Therefore, Sensei devised an initial plan, to find a work by Dostoevsky from another world that matched the name of the ability in this world, an ability user with the same name, thereby drawing the target's attention, making him follow the clues to investigate, and fall into the trap Sensei had set up. Komaeda Nagito revealed a shy smile. Originally, I had no objections to this plan, but along the way, I realized that I might not be able to recall the details, and for these kinds of books, the most important part is the author expressing personal thoughts. If we only write an outline instead, it might not be as effective. Therefore, I came up with a solution. If the goal is to pique the other's interest, then it's not really necessary for every book to be turned into a complete manuscript. After a brief pause, Komaeda Nagito continued speaking. To attract the other's attention, the book could straightforwardly mark to Fyodor Mikhailovich Dostoevsky as the author, just to let the other know that such an author exists, which would be enough to catch their attention. Thus, the key point lies in the ability name. Natsume Soseki nodded with great interest. Continue. Actually, it would be completely possible to cram many famous works into the same volume, reducing the word count required for each story. As for why none of them are finished. Maybe the editor's note at the end could say it's compiled from drafts left unfinished by the author. Anyway, the target knows that this is a trap. If they take the bait, they'll continue investigating, so it's fine. Komaeda Nagito spoke while taking pen and paper from the desk, jotting down a list of items, and then held it up for Natsume Soseki to see. So, even if Sensei's target was only interested because of the author's name, as soon as he turns to the table of contents, he can immediately see the titles of these books. He wrote on the paper, carefully listing Dostoevsky's works in an orderly manner, just like a table of contents. If I write down all of these, and none of them match his ability's name, then it's probably among the other books. Komaeda Nagito casually picked up a classic from the bookshelf and showed the cover to Natsume Soseki. We can imitate this type of style, list the author's other works on the opposite side, and in doing so, by publishing just one book, we can display all the works of another world's Dostoevsky-san. If, even with this, we still cannot guess the name of the ability shared between the two worlds, then there's no point in me writing all the books, it would be useless. Therefore, I think the initial plan was too complex and dragged out unnecessarily. Simplifying it like this should be enough. Natsume Soseki leisurely nodded, your thinking is not wrong. Without expecting it, one day, his plan was restricted by his own author's nature. When mentioning the initial publication plan, his first reaction was to divide it into several volumes. Then, he thought there was no need for that, so he intended to just release the first volume. Even so, it was still limited to regular publishing. Meanwhile, his youngest disciple's thinking was relatively unconventional. He didn't consider readers' sentiments, sales, or reputation, instead fully acting on his own plan. He boldly compressed what was originally a plan for over a dozen publications into a single volume. Natsume Soseki was never one to require his disciples to obediently listen to his every words, so seeing Komaeda Nagito acting on his own accord, he wasn't angry at all, and even found it somewhat surprising. Previously, he saw Komaeda Nagito's kind of fervent admiration, and whatever he said, Komaeda Nagito would agree to without hesitation, not even considering his own stance. He had actually been worried that Komaeda Nagito would lose his sense of self, but now that he saw this, it was all just overthinking on his part. Komaeda Nagito, this kid, seemed easygoing on the surface, but in reality, there wasn't a bit of arrogance lacking in his heart. He thought Natsume's plan was insufficiently thorough, didn't even bother to inform him before quietly making changes, no hesitation whatsoever. On one hand, he was saying how worried he was about not being able to continue helping him in the future. On the other hand, he spoke endlessly about which parts of Natsume Soseki's plan were unnecessary. In that moment, Natsume Soseki even doubted whether Komaeda Nagito had significant opinions about his plan. However, at present, it seemed that the general direction was still following his plan, so it must have been just an illusion. This child was so obedient. Unknowingly putting on his reading glasses, Natsume Soseki acknowledged Komaeda Nagito's corrections to the plan. Very well, let's use your version of the plan. Komaeda Nagito smiled and said, it's truly wonderful that my initiative has been approved by Sensei. I am extremely grateful for your tolerance, Sensei. Natsume Soseki quietly observed Komaeda Nagito, and after discovering that he was approved by him, Komaeda Nagito did not display excessive excitement, as if knowing that his plan was indeed superior to the original and would not be rejected. This young disciple of his truly is not one to be underestimated. Clearly, he can have this kind of confidence, yet why does he always belittle himself? What exactly is it about himself that Komaeda-kun is dissatisfied with? Ah, it's the inability to control his luck, right? As Komaeda himself puts it, it's just slightly better luck than the average person, really not worth mentioning. This matter, if you want to resolve it, might be quite complicated. Let's take it slowly. Natsume Soseki handed the manuscript that Komaeda Nagito completed back to him and said to Komaeda-kun, you don't need to continue transcribing Dostoevsky's work anymore. Let your symptoms of hyperthymesia gradually recover. I have new work for you. What is it? Komaeda Nagito looked at Natsume Soseki with anticipation. Komaeda-kun, you are 15 years old already. Do you have someone you like? Komaeda Nagito's smile froze for a moment, as if he thought he heard something wrong. Huh? Sensei, what strange thing are you talking about? No, I don't think there's any rush for this. Since he believed Natsume Soseki wasn't just gossiping casually and likely had his own purpose, Komaeda Nagito replied cautiously. Then has any cute girl confessed to you, Komaeda-kun? Natsume Soseki added, a boy is fine too. This was really the kind of enlightening statement that would make students who were secretly in relationships in high school cry upon hearing it. Unfortunately, for Komaeda Nagito, it was completely unnecessary. No one has. Komaeda Nagito couldn't help but say, Sensei, is this really that important? Very important, Natsume Soseki said, because this old man wants to give you homework, which includes writing a short novel on the theme of love. Although Natsume Soseki was neither a professor of psychology nor a psychologist, he could analyze from a perspective he was proficient in. Thus, the purpose of this assignment was, in truth, Natsume Soseki's way of wanting to understand the psychological well-being of his young disciple. And, love, without a doubt, is the most important emotion in a person's journey to maturity. This young disciple of his wasn't exactly lacking love since childhood, rather, he was loved from an early age, until suddenly, like a meteor crashing down, that love was no more. For now, although it's not to the extent of a twisted mindset, the logic is clearly problematic. Once he clearly determines the specific cause, he can think of a way to correct it. Komaeda Nagito furrowed his brows, looking troubled as he attempted to politely refuse, Sensei, I think you might have misunderstood. I didn't want to write novels to want to. Natsume Soseki didn't deceive him, and directly said, this old man teaches disciples because of their talent, and having you write is also because I want to understand you more deeply through your writing. This old man just feels that at your age, it's about time to fall in love, and I sense that sometimes you lack the youthful spirit. If you really can't write it, actually the broader definition of love is also fine. I understand. Komaeda Nagito, realizing that Natsume Soseki wasn't intending to train him to be an author, breathed a sigh of relief. If it's just writing a simple novel, I'll do my best. Seeing Komaeda Nagito agree, Natsume Soseki also secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Actually, understanding through writing is just one reason. He could originally have said a different topic, but if he were to give the topic, love, and if Komaeda Nagito felt that he couldn't write anything, he would instinctively start observing the people around him. That way, the more Komaeda Nagito sees, the more he absorbs information related to love. One way or another, it should at least have some positive influence, right? This was his approach as a teacher. The homework's grade is not the most important thing, what matters most is the process of thinking and gathering information for the assignment. As such, there's no need to rush to submit the assignment, just treat it as a long-term project. Right now, it's June. Half a year's time, submit it to this old man before New Year's Day. Komaeda Nagito relaxed a bit, as he really didn't have much interest in this topic. Alright, sensei. After that, the two of them chatted a little about topics unrelated to official matters, and Komaeda Nagito casually made a request. That's right, sensei, I have a friend who is a writer. Recently, his manuscript got accepted, and the editor even recommended his work for a literary award. Today, I'm going to attend his celebration party. May I give him the autographed book you signed for me earlier? He's always been a big fan of yours. As soon as Natsume Soseki heard this description, it sounded familiar. After a little thought, he knew who it was. Is it Oda Sakanosuke? That's right, as expected of sensei, you even know this. Natsume Soseki felt a bit sentimental. In fact, he had also met young Oda Sakanosuke a long time ago. Maybe it was that time that made Oda Sakanosuke think about washing his hands of crime and becoming a novelist. After that, he didn't really concern himself with the other person anymore, and he didn't expect their paths to cross again now. But about the celebratory party. He knew very well who would appear. Given Dazai-Osamu's personality, he was sure that Dazai-Osamu would make a scene and force Oda Sakanosuke to open the gift on the spot, just to see what others had given. He was silent for a few seconds. Komaeda Nagito assumed Natsume Soseki did not want to reveal his identity, so he added, "If sensei, you don't want it, then I'll just change the gift." "No, it doesn't matter." Natsume Soseki regained his composure. "You can gift it. Are you asking this old man for another autograph?" "Ah. Could I?" Natsume Soseki laughed, saying, "After all, you are this old man's student, maybe even my last. Such a small request is something I can fulfill." Komaeda Nagito immediately lit up with joy. Then, "Sorry to trouble you, sensei." Natsume Soseki casually picked up a brush. "Where should I sign this time?" Komaeda Nagito shook his head and took out a small sticky note. "Sensei, just sign here." Natsume Soseki looked at the tiny sticky note. In his entire life, he had never signed his name on such a small piece of paper. Komaeda Nagito explained, "I want to put it in my breast pocket to carry it with me. If the paper is too big, it wouldn't fit." Natsume Soseki understood instantly and didn't dwell on it. He took the paper and signed his name at the top, and on the back, he wrote a wish for Komaeda Nagito's good health. Komaeda Nagito carefully put it away, but since he didn't have a breast pocket right now, he temporarily placed it between the pages of a book. Natsume Soseki cleared his throat. "By the way, we might meet again today, so remember not to accidentally reveal anything." Komaeda Nagito. "Alright." While Komaeda Nagito is still unclear, Natsume Soseki once again turned into a calico cat, leaving Komaeda Nagito's house. That stack of manuscripts also disappeared along with him, making people wonder if the clothes, coats, and other items had actually all turned into the kitty's fat. After packaging the signed book properly, it was already afternoon. While Komaeda Nagito was pondering whether Dazai-Osamu might have forgotten to contact him, he received a text from Dazai-Osamu. "Komaeda-kun, are you still in Tokyo?" Komaeda Nagito replied, "No, I'm currently in Yokohama." "Then my luck isn't too bad. Come to the Port Mafia headquarters to find me." Dazai-Osamu replied, "Let's go together." Komaeda Nagito raised an eyebrow. "Is Dazai-kun stuck with work?" Dazai-Osamu, how perceptive, hurry over. Komaeda Nagito confirmed why Dazai-Osamu always come to find him. Based on Mori Ogai's attitude, Komaeda Nagito knew the other party might genuinely be interested in him, which led Dazai-Osamu to approach him. But Dazai-Osamu was simply using him as an excuse to reasonably avoid work. After clearly understanding the other party's intention, Komaeda Nagito could rest assured and comfortably accept his approach. Thus, he sent Dazai-Osamu a message back, saying he'd come right away, then took the gift and set off. Komaeda Nagito encountered nothing unexpected along the way, smoothly arriving at the Port Mafia headquarters. He then spoke to the receptionist who had previously petted him in his cat form. "Hello, I'm here to see Dazai-kun." The receptionist had already received prior notice from Dazai-Osamu, but she was still a bit taken aback at the moment. "Hello, may I ask if you are Komaeda Nagito-san?" Komaeda Nagito nodded. "Alright, then let me find someone to take you to see Dazai-sama." Before she could finish her sentence, a young man, who seemed to have a radar for anything related to Dazai, came over, coughing slightly. "What's going on?" "Ah, Akutagawa-sama." The receptionist showed great respect towards an executive's direct subordinate, even if Akutagawa Yunosuke was younger than her. "This person here is Dazai-sama." The receptionist hesitated for a moment, sounding a bit uncertain as she spoke. "A friend, here to see Dazai-sama." Akutagawa Yunosuke gave Komaeda Nagito a gaze filled with killing intent. Impossible. How could someone so weak be a friend of Dazai-san? I've never seen him at headquarters at all. Could it be that he couldn't even enter the lower ranks of the organization? Is he some kind of con artist? The receptionist awkwardly explained, "Komaeda-san is not one of us, he's just a regular citizen." Heavens, if Dazai-sama's friend and Dazai-sama's subordinate start fighting. Even though the bad luck are the normal canon fodders, there's no doubt that the one who ends up most severely injured will definitely be Akutagawa-sama. Akutagawa-sama, please calm down a bit, I can already feel phantom pains just from thinking about Dazai-sama lecturing his subordinates. Hahaha, I also feel that I'm invaluable, I'm not really a friend of Dazai-kun. Komaeda Nagito wasn't angry at all, even agreeing with Akutagawa Yunosuke. The receptionist became anxious. Komaeda-san, please stop adding fuel to the fire. Like what the receptionist thought, Akutagawa Yunosuke's hostility immediately deepened. If you really have such self-awareness, then you shouldn't appear here. How could Dazai-san have a friend like this? It's practically dragging him down, there's no way the brilliant Dazai-san would have such a weakness. The next second, Akutagawa Yunosuke's thoughts were interrupted by Komaeda Nagito. So, you're Akutagawa Yunosuke, Dazai-kun's newly recruited subordinate? As expected of Dazai-kun, he has an excellent eye. Komaeda Nagito looked at Akutagawa Yunosuke in amazement, especially when he thought of how, in another world, Dazai-osamu admired Akutagawa so much. But in this world, it was the opposite, which made him feel even more intrigued. Akutagawa Yunosuke's emotions suddenly disconnected, hope outweighing hostility. Did Dazai-san mention me to you? He mentioned you. Komaeda Nagito said, I thought he just had overly high standards, which is why his evaluations of you were rather mediocre, but after meeting you, I realized that you truly cannot meet his expectations. Although Komaeda Nagito had always held a high level of favor towards talented individuals, his attitude towards those he deemed unworthy of that status was also quite indifferent. Recalling his two encounters with Akutagawa Yunosuke, the name had raised his expectations, but at this moment, he was even more disappointed. At first glance, this Akutagawa doesn't seem very sharp, huh? The clever Dazai-kun probably wouldn't be too satisfied with him. But having this name means he has potential, right? Maybe he'll improve a bit when he grows up. Dazai-kun mentioned that he picked him up from a poor neighborhood, without any foundation or resources, so it's not fair to expect too much. Right now, this hope is still a bit immature, but if Dazai-kun sees value in someone, there's definitely going to be a transformation sooner or later. Perhaps the other party doesn't even focus on intelligence skills. So Komaeda Nagito sincerely asked, may I ask, what exactly did Dazai-kun see in you back then? Although Komaeda Nagito was speaking the truth and sincerely asking the question, he still managed to anger Akutagawa Yunosuke. Dazai-san saying such things would be one thing, but who do you think you are? A lowly commoner dares to look down on him with such an attitude? Akutagawa Yunosuke sharply sensed Komaeda Nagito's subtle demeanor, and the killing intent that had originally subsided flared up again. If you're that curious, then go ahead and experience it yourself. Sensing the danger, Komaeda Nagito instinctively took a step back, but because the lobby's floor is recently clean, his foot slipped, and he instantly lost his balance, falling onto the ground. At the same time, just as he rubbed his scalp while avoiding Akutagawa Yunosuke's ability, Rashomon. Komaeda Nagito took a deep breath, leaning against the pillar, showing no sign of resisting. Akutagawa Yunosuke's face was cold and he looked very displeased. Get up. Stop pretending. Are you trying to show me you can't stand up? What ordinary citizen, just as he thought, it was a lie. How could it be such a coincidence that he could avoid his attack? Besides, there's no way Dazai-san would really associate with someone so ordinary. I'm not pretending. Komaeda Nagito broke into a cold sweat, feels like a bone is broken. He just fell and used his left hand to brace himself, and the result was a cracking sound, followed by a continuous throbbing pain. Ah, truly unfortunate, but at least his right hand managed to protect the package gift. Akutagawa Yunosuke. That cold sweat on his forehead didn't look fake. Could it be that he really broke a bone from the fall? Honestly. Although last time we met, I already felt like you weren't very good at listening to others, I didn't expect you'd act without a word. Komaeda Nagito used his shoulder and head to lean against the pillar to struggle to stand up. Akutagawa Yunosuke frowned. I do not recall meeting you before. Komaeda Nagito smiled wryly. Ha ha ha, after all, someone as insignificant as me wouldn't leave much of an impression. Moreover, I was rushing to class at that time, didn't even realize it was you, and didn't greet you at all. If I knew you were waiting for Dazai-kun, I would have gone up and helped wake him up. Akutagawa Yunosuke wasn't truly clueless. Suddenly, he understood where Komaeda Nagito had seen him, and blurted out. You're the one who get a room together with Dazai-san. Chapter 49 End. Chapter 50, Boss Mori finds out. Akutagawa Yunosuke, this guy, just spoke without thinking, or maybe spoke without fully considering, but he's still too young to understand the other meaning of the word, get a room, and the lobby of the Port Mafia headquarters fell into an eerie silence. Originally, there were still some people murmuring, asking about the situation or exchanging small talk, but now it all stopped for this one silence. At this moment, everyone held their breath, abandoning the human language system, attempting to communicate in the most primitive way, with their eyes. Did you hear that just now? I heard it. I heard it. He was talking about Dazai-sama, wasn't he? Who is that person? Dazai-sama's lover? When did they become lovers? Isn't this the person who caused the logistics to be punished last time? Back then, it was said they were friends. At the moment when everyone exchanged intense gazes with one another, even someone as clueless as Akutagawa Yunosuke noticed the sudden eerie silence around them. After all, even the most oblivious people would notice that there was no longer anyone walking back and forth nearby, sensing that something was off. Not to mention that they were still in a mafia environment, where vigilance was always required. Akutagawa Yunosuke, though it hasn't been long since he was picked up by the Port Mafia, had always been very attentive to changes in his surroundings back when he lived in the slums. This was to prevent anyone from ambushing him or his younger sister, who were still so young. After a few days of being under the high-pressure training of his new mentor, Dazai-Osamu, he has now become even more sharp and perceptive. Upon realizing that Komaeda Nagito truly posed no threat, he shifted his gaze away, coldly turning his head to scan the surroundings. While people couldn't emotionally connect with one another, but in this instant, in the lobby of the Port Mafia headquarters, everyone except Akutagawa Yunosuke and Komaeda Nagito seemed to share the same telepathic response, making the same reaction without prior agreement. Everyone resumed their conversations, continued walking, or go to the receptionist. The lobby became noisy once more, and it seemed as if nobody paid attention to what Akutagawa Yunosuke had said. They all acted as though everything was completely normal, as if the nearly 10 seconds of silence just now had been nothing more than an illusion of Akutagawa Yunosuke's. Akutagawa Yunosuke. He suspiciously glanced around the lobby. The receptionist, while talking with someone at the counter, forced smile and trying to find words to say to that person. Only after Akutagawa Yunosuke's gaze moved away from her direction did she let out a sigh of relief. Komaeda Nagito, however, didn't care about the surrounding reactions. He gloomily tucked the book, which had been wrapped up, under his arm, using his right hand to weakly hold his left arm, which seemed to be broken. He said, "Has Akutagawa-kun calmed down yet? If there's nothing more to say, I'd like to go find Dazai-kun." Actually, when it comes to matters concerning Dazai-kun, Akutagawa-kun, you really have no right to ask, do you? Though I don't mind, others might not be as forgiving as me. Akutagawa Yunosuke frowned. Without waiting for him to say anything, Komaeda Nagito continued speaking. Perhaps in Akutagawa-kun's view, my not pursuing the matter is because I'm too weak, incapable of doing so. If that's what you think, I really can't refute it. Komaeda Nagito's words took over the conversation, instantly leaving Akutagawa Yunosuke a bit annoyed. At this moment, a dignified voice suddenly sounded. Akutagawa-kun is too impulsive. Go to Koyo's place to receive your punishment. Actually, this is also due to Dazai-kun's lack of proper guidance, so let Dazai-kun apologize on behalf of Akutagawa-kun. Komaeda-kun, it's rare for you to come here, and yet you encounter such a situation. As the boss, I do feel a bit uneasy about it. Boss Mori. Boss. Everyone in the lobby knelt upon seeing Mori Ogai, including Akutagawa Yunosuke. There were no exceptions. For the moment, only Mori Ogai, Ozaki Koyo behind him, and Komaeda Nagito remained standing. This was not the first time Komaeda Nagito had seen such a display. When the cruise ship stopped at Yokohama port previously and the port mafia came to greet Mori Ogai, the scene had been even grander, so he remained perfectly calm, with no intention of kneeling. After all, he wasn't a member of the port mafia, he was a guest. Mori Ogai hadn't come specifically because of Komaeda Nagito. In fact, he had arrived quite some time ago. He simply felt there was something interesting going on and thus didn't immediately step forward. Ozaki Koyo had always been prepared, not merely watching from the sidelines. When Akutagawa Yunosuke ignored Dazai Osamu's friend and directly attacked Komaeda Nagito, Ozaki Koyo had to step in. Unexpectedly, Komaeda Nagito's luck was so good that he managed to narrowly escape. At that time, Mori Ogai's mind began once again to frantically analyze Komaeda Nagito's data, becoming even more intrigued by Komaeda Nagito's luck. In the end, before he could witness anything further himself, Akutagawa Yunosuke suddenly made an astonishing statement, the impact of which was too shocking and severely affected Port Mafia's work efficiency. Akutagawa Yunosuke mentioned the staying in the hotel together incident, and, in fact, Mori Ogai had already heard about it during the regular report. He knew exactly what the truth was. Because, according to Komaeda Nagito, Dazai Osamu was busy attempting suicide and not answering calls, Mori Ogai became very worried that the next day Dazai Osamu would use recuperation as an excuse to continue his passive slacking off. Therefore, he assigned the diligent Akutagawa Yunosuke to pick up Dazai Osamu. What? Which hotel? If Dazai Osamu could investigate it easily, so how could he not know? In short, Mori Ogai clearly understood the causes and effects, but when he heard Akutagawa Yunosuke's summary, he still almost choked on his own saliva. Even Mori Ogai behaves like this, so it's needless to say Ozaki Koyo who wasn't in the know. At that time, this usually unflinching Port Mafia executive covered her mouth with the sleeve of her kimono, widened her eyes, and looked toward Komaeda Nagito in disbelief. When Dazai-kun mentioned they were friends last time, Komaeda-kun was still objecting. Are young people progressing this quickly nowadays? The human form ability Elise revealed a sympathetic look, but to take a liking to Dazai, does this guy have some sort of eye problem? Or did he get tangled up by Dazai? How pitiful Mori Ogai coughed a few times, finally managing to save himself. No, there's a misunderstanding here. Why did you all so naturally accept this explanation? Dazai-kun and Komaeda-kun are both men. Did he set up the appropriate response for Elise? Damn it. He didn't think it through. Ozaki Koyo averted her gaze. In the face of true love, gender is not an issue. Honestly, with Dazai-kun's appearance, I feel that as long as personalities match well, Dazai-kun wouldn't care about gender. Elise responded concisely, because whatever Dazai does is never surprising. Mori Ogai remained silent for a moment. You all make a valid point. But do you really think Dazai could find a lover? He feels that Dazai is destined to be lonely for life. Unless Dazai Osamu seriously plans to pick those matchmaking candidates, otherwise finding someone who truly shares his feelings is absolutely impossible. Unable to find someone who resonates with himself, Mori Ogai feels very lonely. However, no matter what the relationship between Komaeda Nagito and Dazai Osamu actually is, it doesn't affect Mori Ogai's interest in Komaeda Nagito. Therefore, he now steps out to make peace, preventing Akutagawa Yunosuke from escalating things further. Komaeda Nagito treated Mori Ogai with much more politeness this time, at least his words didn't sound like adding fuel to the fire with sarcasm. He even spoke up for Akutagawa Yunosuke. Long time no see, Mori-san. I think the misunderstanding between Akutagawa-kun and me is just a small one, and doesn't yet warrant punishment. Mori Ogai glanced at Komaeda Nagito's hands. Having a guest suffer such misfortune is not the way the port mafia treats guests. Akutagawa-kun's lack of proper education is Dazai-kun's fault, and this is a matter within our port mafia. I understand your sentiments, Komaeda-kun, but there's no need to say more. Boss. Akutagawa Yunosuke had no objections to his own punishment, but he didn't want Dazai-Osamu to bear an unjust reprimand because of him. Dazai-san wasn't wrong, it was me. Calm down, Akutagawa-kun, Moriogai said nonchalantly. Koyo, he's yours. Understood. Ozaki Koyo stepped in front of Akutagawa Yunosuke. Akutagawa-kun, come with me. Akutagawa Yunosuke could not repeatedly defy the boss's orders in front of everyone, so he obediently stood behind Ozaki Koyo. Moriogai, in turn, said kindly to Komaeda Nagito, let me take a look at your hand. Don't judge me by my appearance, I used to be a doctor, you know. Komaeda Nagito was also not polite, nodding his head while sweating coldly, but his mind was still spinning quickly. In this world, Moriogai is also a doctor. Moriogai had no idea how much his words made Komaeda Nagito think. He brought Komaeda Nagito to the sofa in the lobby, sat down, and began to examine Komaeda Nagito, while someone quickly brought over the med kit. The sharp pain from the arm had passed, and now there was only a dull ache. When Moriogai squeezed it, Komaeda Nagito, already somewhat accustomed to it, momentarily felt his brain go blank from the pain. Moriogai keenly noticed Komaeda Nagito's body suddenly tremble, and belatedly realized that this child's ability to endure pain was different from the Port Mafia's members and those on the battlefield back then. He asked with concern, do you need a painkiller? His gaze shifted to the side, and the receptionist nervously replied, Boss, we only have anesthetic needles here. Should I have someone get a painkiller? Normally, if injured, one would go directly to the infirmary. Asking for treatment directly in the lobby, it's common to avoid using slow-acting painkillers. If really necessary, someone could take a trip to get them in time. It's better to save the space for the mini-fridge, which stores various medicines that need cold preservation, more essential than painkillers. Being reminded like this, Komaeda Nagito suddenly thought of something, breaking out in a cold sweat, and said, in the left pocket of my jacket, there's a painkiller. Not all painkillers are suitable for this kind of situation, but Moriogai did not refuse. Being close, he simply reached out to search for it. Because of his previous experience as a doctor, after getting the medicine, he instinctively glanced at it first to prevent any future drug interactions. This stringent medicine had no packaging, but, as usual, the label bore the name of the drug to prevent any errors. Moriogai's hand paused as he held the medicine. The label on this. It's true that there are similar ones on the market, but outsiders wouldn't understand. Just by touching the embossed serial number, he understood clearly, this isn't the type sold outside but rather the kind he had once encountered while serving as a military doctor, used internally, and most likely the latest version. In fact, many items are initially military grade. Only after they are upgraded to a new version can the obsolete version be released to the public, primarily to prevent organizations with ill intent from acquiring and deciphering military-grade equipment through civilian purchases. The pharmaceuticals, although not as strictly controlled by advanced technology, do not have a significant impact on the development of society. Under such circumstances, the relevant departments, without a need to claim achievements, are not too proactive in expanding. Moreover, after the war ended, research in various fields became less urgent, and the frequency of innovation also slowed down. This painkiller is an example. It's available on the market, and the formulation is almost the same as it was 5 or 6 years ago. This drug has 3 advantages: fast effect, wide range of applications, and difficult to develop resistance to it, especially the latter two, which are really impressive. The types of pain require different types of painkillers, and overuse will lead to drug resistance, resulting in decreased effectiveness. The main goal of developing this painkiller is to maximize its usage range, so it won't be necessary to switch to another painkiller just because someone becomes resistant to it. Such switching would be really troublesome. Therefore, for military doctors, this drug is extremely useful and has made a deep impression. However, considering the issue of battlefield consumption, later on, it was directly replaced with easy-to-addict painkillers. Moriogai hadn't prescribed this drug to patients for a while. Where did Komaeda Nagito get this painkiller from? Mori Ogai kept his expression unchanged, hiding this doubt in his heart, and then had the receptionist poured water for Komaeda Nagito, allowing him to take the painkiller. This medicine seemed to work very quickly, even faster than the version he used back when he was in the military. In no time, Komaeda Nagito's pained expression eased down. Of course, Mori Ogai couldn't just wait for the medicine to take effect. He used a rather skillful technique to carefully examine Komaeda Nagito without increasing the pain. It seems to be a bone fracture. Sounds a bit better than a broken bone. The receptionist was very perceptive and, after the previous incident where painkillers were unavailable, she immediately asked another colleague to send an email. After the colleague received it, a call was made to the medical department, which promptly delivered the relevant supplies to the lobby. Those arriving late didn't know what happened. When passing by the lobby today and seeing this extravagant scene, they tried their best to look straight ahead, resisting the urge to turn and look at the corner where Boss Mori was. His intentions were very clear, telling everyone to continue their tasks and not stand around watching. So, they could only bow in the distance and sneak a glance at the situation. Boss Mori actually bandaged an outsider himself. Who is that guy? Sheesh. Don't ask here. We'll talk about it later. Mori Ogai helped Komaeda Nagito set his dislocated wrist bone back into its original position, immobilized it, and bandaged it well. Then, just like a normal doctor, he gave detailed instructions, even modestly saying, I haven't treated an injury for quite a while. If you're not at ease, it's best to go to the hospital for another checkup. Komaeda Nagito wasn't exactly skilled at treating injuries, but because he had extensive experience with dislocations, fractures, and broken bones, his observation skills were quite good. He could immediately tell from Mori Ogai's technique that the other was very familiar with it. It was the proper textbook technique from the medical academy, not some backyard technique learned by a self-taught black market doctor, so he was quite reassured. Of course I trust Mori-san. If he hadn't had that confidence, Mori Ogai wouldn't have proactively taken the job from the start. Mori Ogai didn't modestly dismiss it either, as he knew his own level, said a few more words, and then stood up. I'll take you to find Dazai-kun. No. How could I be so shameless as to trouble Mori-san like this? Komaeda Nagito instinctively stood up to refuse, waving his hand, but forgot that there was still a gift package on his knee, which immediately fell to the ground. Mori Ogai swiftly caught it, and as he touched the wrapping paper, he instinctively gave it a pinch to check its contents. Is this a gift for Dazai-kun? Komaeda Nagito first thanked Mori Ogai for his help, then skipped over the question without answering, only saying, It's a book. I see. Mori Ogai wasn't surprised in the slightest and just said, the wrapping paper is a bit torn. Do you need to rewrap it? Komaeda Nagito shook his head, no need to trouble Mori-san, I'll pack up a bit myself later. Mori Ogai didn't insist, he waved his subordinates away, leaving him alone with Komaeda Nagito as they went up the elevator. What kind of book are you gifting? A novel from Natsume Soseki-sensei. Mori Ogai smiled and said, Komaeda-kun really likes Natsume-sensei, doesn't he? I do. The painkiller's effect was very good, and Komaeda Nagito had already forgotten the pain, unable to stop himself from gushing. The Japanese literary world relies entirely on sensei's salvation. It's a pity that sensei's works are still too few. If there were more, the difference between modern textbooks and the classics wouldn't be so large. Mori Ogai casually asked, Natsume-sensei is really strict, isn't he? How could that be? Sensei is really... Komaeda Nagito suddenly went from a fanatical state to realizing something wasn't right, but he pretended not to notice and continued speaking. From the words, you can feel that sensei is a gentle person. Ha ha ha, well, maybe my understanding differs from yours. Mori Ogai also acted as if he hadn't noticed Komaeda Nagito's slip of the tongue, and continued the topic, alright, Dazai-kun is on this floor. This isn't your first time here, is it? Yeah. Komaeda Nagito said flatly, before, I was unfortunately affected by an ability, and I came here to ask Dazai-kun to help me remove it. Actually, just now downstairs, I said that there was an issue with Dazai-kun's way of educating Akutagawa-kun, and since Akutagawa-kun was punished, he couldn't escape the consequences either. But Komaeda-kun, as a guest, was injured. If I also reprimanded Dazai-kun, making you come here for nothing, it would feel a bit too much. Mori Ogai spoke with a kindly understanding expression, so, I didn't do anything to punish Dazai-kun. If Komaeda-kun wants to find Dazai-kun, go ahead. Mori-san, you really are a good boss. Komaeda Nagito said with admiration, Dazai-kun is truly lucky to have a superior like you. Mori Ogai. Actually, to be honest, he never imagined that one day he would receive such an evaluation. If Dazai-Osamu heard these words, he would definitely throw up on the spot. Mori Ogai's smile stiffened a bit as he said, I won't be coming in, his office is at the second door. Alright, thank you, Mori-san. Komaeda Nagito politely thanked him and then took his leave. At almost the same moment, as an intelligence officer on a mission, Sakaguchi Ongo, who had been working overtime to attend Oda Sakanosuke's celebration, finally managed to retrieve the intel at the headquarters, stepped into the lobby, and immediately found the atmosphere to be quite unusual. Anxiety, but a very strange kind. A bit impatient yet filled with a mysterious atmosphere. Did you already know? I knew, but is this something we can discuss now? Didn't Ozaki-sama leave without telling us to keep quiet? I guess it's okay to talk about it a bit, right? The logistics department was really punished that time. Akutagawa-sama also got punished, didn't he? No, the logistics department was punished for revealing an executive's personal matters. Akutagawa-sama was punished for injuring a guest, but come to think of it, why is the boss being so polite to that kid? Hey! Use more polite language, that's not an ordinary person, that's a friend of that esteemed one. Sakaguchi Ongo heard this and didn't quite understand, but from keywords like, that logistic incident before, Akutagawa, executive's personal matter, and guest, he speculated that the decrease in the port mafia's work efficiency was probably related to Dazai-Osamu. He adjusted his glasses, didn't intend to ask anyone directly in the lobby, but instead returned to his office, and then asked. Do you know what happened in the lobby today? Being part of the intelligence department, naturally, Sakaguchi Ongo's colleagues were also intel agents. If they didn't know about something this big, then it would be better to resign, but knowing this many secrets, resignation wasn't an option. At best, they'd live under surveillance by the port mafia. Got it. A colleague of Sakaguchi Ongo said, Dazai-sama's direct subordinate, Akutagawa Yunosuke, openly announced in the lobby that some outsider named Komaeda Nagito, who had come looking for Dazai-sama, that the two had gotten a room together. Pfft. Cough cough cough. Back at the office, Sakaguchi Ongo had just taken a sip of water and ended up spitting it out. What? That's right, that Komaeda Nagito, the one Dazai-sama escorted home twice, that Komaeda Nagito. Akutagawa said he and Dazai-sama get a room together. Though I feel that Akutagawa's meaning of get a room isn't that meaning. Sakaguchi Ongo's face looked horrified. Right, I also feel it's not that meaning. His thoughts were truly too dirty. What's wrong with getting a room normally? A colleague shrugged, but since Akutagawa is Dazai-sama's direct subordinate, saying such things doesn't look very good. Moreover, not everyone would think of which meaning Akutagawa intended. So I think Dazai-sama's reputation will still be affected. That's for sure. However, boss. Sakaguchi Ongo suddenly became alert. What about the boss? The colleague said, Akutagawa injured that Komaeda, but the boss personally bandaged him, and they were talking and laughing as the boss sent him to meet Dazai-sama. Maybe we'll soon have that guy as a colleague. Sakaguchi Ongo, I feel that's unlikely. No, tonight I must ask Dazai, what on earth is all this nonsense? At the same time, as the person involved but isolated from the related events due to being busy with work, Dazai-Osamu finally waited for Komaeda Nagito in the office. You're so late, what happened? Dazai-Osamu, while grumbling, lifted his head, his gaze stopping on Komaeda Nagito's well-bandaged wrist with a start. He noticed the familiar knotting of the bandages, and his expression turned cold. Why is it like this? Chapter 50 end.